So this morning I want to talk to you about your house and if you have a house when you file bankruptcy. If you own a house and you're thinking about bankruptcy, your house could be the number one thing that is causing stress. If you decide to file bankruptcy, it could be what's keeping you from even talking to a bankruptcy lawyer. There are lots of things that you want to know if you own a house. First of all, most people are able to keep their house if they file bankruptcy. The biggest reason somebody will lose their house when they file bankruptcy is because they haven't made their mortgage payments. The bankruptcy may not get you caught up on your mortgage payments. It can, but if it's not able to and you don't make those payments, then you could lose your house. But that will be an action by the lender. It won't be an action by the bankruptcy court or by the bankruptcy trustee. So the first thing that you want to know if you decide to file bankruptcy is that you have to include all of your debts and all of your assets. And so your house is going to be listed as an asset in your bankruptcy. Also, your mortgage is going to be included as a debt in on your bankruptcy petition. So when I sit down with somebody who's thinking about filing bankruptcy, I'll ask whether or not they own any real estate, which could be a house that they live in, a house that they rent, vacant land, timeshare, anything that is considered real estate I want to know about. If they own a house, I want to know two pieces of information. The first is how much they owe on the house, and I want to know how much is still left on the loan. If they're behind on the mortgage, I want to know how many months that might be. And then we need to know the value of the house. And there are several sources that we can use to find that value. If I'm sitting at my desk talking with somebody, I'll pull up some online, some websites, Zillow.com, Realtor.com, Trulia, Redfin.com, and take a look at their numbers, and then I'll ask the person that I'm sitting with what they think the house is worth. Those online sources are a good jumping off point. They are not, the be-all, end-all for valuing a house. And I want to see how the value that the person that I'm sitting with compares to what I'm finding online, and see if they're close or if they're off. It's not unusual for somebody I'm sitting with to undervalue their house, and if they do that, I want to know why they think it's worth less than what I'm seeing online. And so, I'm looking for repairs that might need to be made, upgrades that might need to be made, or updates that might need to be made. And so then I'm going to calculate how much equity is in the house. And the equity is the difference between what the house is worth and how much is owed on the mortgage for the house. So I'm going to take the mortgage amount and subtract the value of the house. Or I'm going to take the value of the house and subtract the mortgage and take the difference between those two. If that number is above the homestead exemption amount, and right now the homestead exemption amount in Colorado is $75,000. Unless you're over the age of 60 or you're disabled and receiving Social Security disability insurance, or you have a dependent living in the house who is over the age of 60 or is disabled, preferably receiving Social Security disability insurance. And so if the house is worth less than $75,000 or $105,000, the homestead exemption, if you're over the age of 60 or disabled, is $105,000. The regular homestead exemption is $75,000. So if there is less than $75,000 in equity, or $105,000 if you're over the age of 60 or disabled, then all things being equal, we're probably okay for a Chapter 7 filing bankruptcy. You'll be able to keep your house, liquidate all of your dischargeable debts, and you can find definitions of dischargeable and non-dischargeable debts in other areas of our website. So if we look at that number and it's close to $75,000, there's close to $75,000 in equity, or over that amount, then we're going to talk about other ways. By just using those online resources, we're going to talk about other ways to value the house. And so there are a few other ways we're going to do that. The tax assessment that gets issued every year, we're not going to use. That's not really a reliable indicator, in my experience, for what fair market value is. And that's the number that we have to look at, is if you were to hypothetically put your house on the market, how much do you think you would get for it, or how much would you ask for it? And that's the number we're looking for. So the online resources we can use, a comparative market analysis that's done by an experienced realtor who sells in your neighborhood is also a good source. An appraiser is also a good source. And so the websites that I talked about, it's just the first step to seeing what those numbers look like. If there's a difference between the value that the person I'm talking with is using and those online websites or those online sites, then I want, one of the comparative market analysis, an appraisal, something that's more concrete as to why there's that difference between those values. And if somebody has more than the homestead exemption amount in their house, we're going to talk about what would happen if they file Chapter 7. And if they file a Chapter 7, then and they've got more than the homestead exemption, then the bankruptcy court's going to want that unprotected equity. So if you've got $85,000 in equity in your house, I can only protect $75,000, you got $10,000 in unprotected equity. The bankruptcy court's going to want that, and we're going to talk about how you're going to manage that and whether or not you can manage that. If you don't have that $10,000, then Chapter 7 is probably not a good idea if you want to keep the house. Then we'll talk about Chapter 13, where Chapter 13 allows you to keep your house, but your unsecured creditors at minimum will have to get that unprotected equity in your house, which would be $10,000 in my example. So if you hire a bankruptcy lawyer, you want somebody who's experienced, who's going to be able to take you through that process to talk about the math that they're going to use for valuing your house and whether or not there's any risk of it being liquidated by the bankruptcy trustee. And if it is, then you're going to want to talk about it at Chapter 13. If you've got less than that homestead exemption amount, Chapter 13 is not necessary. Some people think that they have to file a Chapter 13 to protect their house, and that's not necessary. It's possible to protect a house in Chapter 7. It just depends on the equity. So that's the number that I'm going to drill down on when I meet somebody who owns a house. So these are just some of the initial steps that are going to happen if you decide to file bankruptcy. This is going to be part of the conversation that I'm going to have with you if you own a house and you want to file or are thinking about filing bankruptcy. I hope this video has been helpful. You can find more information on our website, and we offer consultations. You can find a link on the website to schedule a consultation at a time that's convenient for you. Thank you.